Chief Wisdom sat alone in his grand sitting room, the leather sofa creaking beneath his weight. The chandelier above sparkled, but his heart was dull with worry. His son, Kelvin, was 35, wealthy, handsome, and successful, yet cold as a block of ice. No woman had ever lasted in his life more than a few weeks. The ones who tried left in tears, discarded, disrespected, or deceived. To Kelvin, women were distractions or gold diggers. He believed love was for fools. Friends and family had tried everything. Introductions, matchmaking, even church prayers. Nothing worked. Chief Wisdom had begged, pleaded, even threatened, but Kelvin would laugh and wave him off. "Marriage is a trap, Papa," he would say. "I don't need anyone to make me happy." But Chief Wisdom saw through the arrogance. His son was lonely. He needed love, but it had to be real, tested, proven, and pure. One night, while staring out at the blinking lights of Ojuelegba from his balcony, an idea struck the old man. What if he could find the right woman not by words or beauty, but by heart? The only way to know a person's true character is to meet them at their lowest. And so, the chief made a bold decision. He would disguise himself as a blind beggar and search for a woman worthy of his son's heart. Early one Monday morning, Chief Wisdom walked out his mansion dressed in old clothes. He wore torn trousers, a faded shirt, and a dirty cap that covered most of his face. A pair of dark glasses completed the look. He held a crooked walking stick and practiced moving slowly, pretending to be blind. It was the perfect disguise. No one would ever suspect he was a man of great wealth. When he arrived in Ojuelegba, the streets were already buzzing. Hawkers shouted prices, Danfo buses honked, and people rushed about their day. Chief Wisdom found a quiet corner under a broken signpost and sat on the ground. He placed a small rusty cup in front of him. "Help a blind man," he whispered, barely audible. Many passed him without looking. Some dropped coins. But he was not there for money. He was watching, listening, waiting. That same afternoon, a young woman walked by with a tray of oranges on her head. She looked stressed, moving fast and muttering under her breath. As she passed a blind beggar, he accidentally stretched his leg and tripped her. The oranges scattered across the dirty road. She screamed in anger. "What is wrong with you, old man? Are you blind for real?" she shouted. Chief Wisdom apologized in a weak voice. "Sorry, my daughter. I didn't know you were passing." Instead of helping, the woman hissed, kicked his rusty cup, and walked away. People laughed, but Chief Wisdom shook his head. "That one has beauty, but no heart," he murmured. His test had begun. 2 days later, a well-dressed lady in high heels walked toward him. She was holding a big handbag and speaking loudly on the phone. As she passed, Chief Wisdom stretched out his hand and begged for food. She paused, looked down at him with disgust, and covered her nose. "Ugh, Lagos is full of dirty people," she said. "Why can't the government remove these things from the road?" Her heels clicked away without another word. A young man beside Chief Wisdom shook his head. "Some women are all packaging, but their inside is empty," he said. The chief nodded, his heart heavy. So far, none had shown the kindness he was looking for. On a rainy morning, the skies turned gray and the gutters in Ojuelegba overflowed. Chief Wisdom sat drenched, shivering under a piece of nylon. Most people rushed past him, trying to stay dry. Then he saw a girl with a basket of bread and groundnut. She looked no older than 20 and wore slippers that slapped the wet ground. She paused when she saw him and quickly walked up. "Baba, you will catch cold like this," she said, placing her tray on a dry patch nearby. She removed her scarf and wrapped it around his shoulders. Then she gave him 2 loaves of bread and a small bottle of water. "You don't have to pay," she added with a small smile. Chief Wisdom couldn't speak. His heart beat faster. He had found something different. The next day, Chief Wisdom returned to the same spot early, hoping to see her again. Around 8 a.m., the same girl appeared, balancing her tray. She saw him and waved. "Good morning, Baba," she greeted. "Are you feeling better?" He nodded slowly, adjusting his glasses. "Yes, thank you. What is your name, my daughter?" "My name is Peace," she said. I hawk bread to support my younger brother. Our parents are gone. Chief Wisdom was touched. This girl was not only kind but strong and responsible. She chatted with him for a few minutes before continuing her rounds. As she walked away, he whispered, "I think I've found her." One hot afternoon, trouble struck. A group of area boys began harassing people near the junction. One of them noticed a blind beggar and shouted, "See this one-day form beggar. Make we check if him get money." Before Chief Wisdom could react, they descended on him. They kicked him, slapped him, and emptied his cup. People passed without stopping, afraid to get involved. Then a loud voice cried, "Leave him alone!" It was Peace. She rushed forward, holding a stick, swinging at the boys. "Cowards!" she screamed. The boys scattered, cursing as they fled. Peace helped Chief Wisdom sit up, blood on his forehead. "You'll be fine, Baba. I won't leave you." Peace couldn't let him sleep on the street that night. She begged her madam to allow the old man rest in the corner of their small shop. The madam hesitated, but agreed. Peace laid him on a mat and covered him with a wrapper. She cleaned his wound with salt water and gave him some pap to drink. That night, Chief Wisdom couldn't sleep. His body ached, but his heart was warm. Who was this girl? She risked her safety, comfort, and earnings for a beggar she barely knew. "Kelvin must meet her," he muttered. "But I can't reveal the truth yet. Not until I'm sure." Back in their mansion, Kelvin enjoyed his usual luxury. He sat by the poolside, sipping wine and scrolling through his phone. His friend, Mike, laughed. "You still don't believe in love, B.I.?" Kelvin smirked. "Love is a scam, bro. Everyone wants something. Money, status, lifestyle. I've seen it all." Chief Wisdom returned that evening, bruised but alive. He sat across from his son without saying much. "What happened to you?" Kelvin asked. "Accident," his father replied coldly. In truth, he didn't want Kelvin to know anything yet. He had one more test for Peace, and a deeper plan to open his son's eyes. The next day, Chief Wisdom went back to Ojuelegba with a deeper disguise, this time acting like he was partially mad. He mumbled to himself, rocked back and forth, and refused to eat. He wanted to see if Peace would still care when he offered nothing but madness and confusion. As expected, people avoided him. Some called him crazy. Others threw stones. But when Peace returned from her rounds and saw his condition, her eyes filled with tears. "Baba, what happened?" she whispered. She sat beside him, holding his hand, not minding the smell or dirt. "Don't worry. I'm here." Chief Wisdom felt a tear escape beneath his glasses. Peace had passed the final test. That evening, after Peace helped Chief Wisdom into the corner of the shop again, she sat on the floor and sighed deeply. He asked her gently, "Why you always help me like this, my daughter?" Peace hesitated, then said, "Because I know what it means to be ignored. When my parents died in a motor accident, my uncle threw us out. I had to grow up quickly. I've begged before, sir. I've slept on the streets." Her eyes welled up as she continued. "My younger brother, David, is the only family I have left. He's just 13. I can't afford to let him suffer." Chief Wisdom listened in silence. This girl had faced life's cruelty and still chose kindness. He clenched his fist. "Kelvin will meet her," he swore in his heart, "even if I have to drag him to Ojuelegba myself." Chief Wisdom knew Kelvin would never agree to meet a bread hawker. His son was proud, rich, and surrounded by flashy women. So he came up with a clever plan. He told Kelvin he found a rare, kind-hearted girl who helped him while he was sick. "I want to help her small business," he said. "I need you to come and see for yourself." Kelvin raised a brow. "So now you're matchmaking with bread sellers, Papa?" He laughed. But Chief Wisdom didn't react. He said, "It's not about bread. It's about heart. Come just once." After much hesitation, Kelvin agreed, only to satisfy his father's strange obsession. But he had no idea what was waiting for him. Kelvin dressed in simple clothes that Friday afternoon and followed his father to Ojuelegba. They stood across the road, hiding behind a row of shops. Peace was at her usual corner, smiling as she sold bread and joked with customers. Kelvin stared at her, unimpressed. "She's just ordinary," he muttered. "There's nothing special." But then Peace saw a young boy drop his tray of plantain chips. Other hawkers laughed, but she rushed over and helped him pack up. She gave him a bottle of water and rubbed his back. Kelvin paused. "She's kind," he murmured. Chief Wisdom nodded. "Now go talk to her." Kelvin frowned. "I don't do street girls," he snapped. And he walked away. Back at the mansion, Chief Wisdom was furious. "Kelvin, your pride will destroy you one day," he shouted. "That girl is more of a human being than any of those women you bring home." Kelvin scoffed. "Papa, I can't marry a hawker. Think of what people will say." His father replied, "You care about people's opinion more than your happiness? Then you're already a slave." That night, the house was quiet, but Chief Wisdom couldn't sleep. Something had changed in Kelvin's eyes when he saw Peace. There was a flicker of respect, even if he didn't admit it. The old man smiled to himself. He will return. 3 days later, Kelvin drove himself to Ojuelegba without telling anyone. Something had been bothering him. He parked a distance away and walked toward Peace's usual spot. She was arguing with a man who claimed she owed him money. Kelvin watched as she calmly explained herself and returned the exact balance the man demanded. Impressed by her courage, Kelvin approached and bought a loaf of bread. Peace smiled, not recognizing him. "Thank you, sir," she said politely. "Would you like groundnut too?" Kelvin chuckled. "Yes, and maybe a short talk too." Peace gave him a curious look. "If you're not a troublemaker, sure." It was the beginning of something new. Kelvin began visiting Peace almost daily, pretending to be a struggling businessman named Ken. He wore plain clothes, carried a cheap phone, and acted humble. Peace enjoyed his company. He listened when she spoke, laughed at her jokes, and even helped carry her tray sometimes. She began to look forward to his visits. Meanwhile, Chief Wisdom watched from a distance, pretending not to know. The plan was working better than he imagined. But he also saw something deeper. Kelvin was beginning to change. He was smiling more, talking less about money, and asking about real things. Ojuelegba was working magic on his heart and heart. Peace's madam, Mama Clara, began to notice her closeness with Ken. She didn't like it. "Be careful with that boy," she warned. "He might be pretending. You're too soft, Peace." But Peace laughed it off. "He's kind, Mama. He helped me with my basket last week without asking for anything." Still, Mama Clara didn't trust easily. One day, Mama Clara followed Peace secretly and watched Kelvin give her a gift, an umbrella and 2 wrappers. "Ah," she hissed, "so he has money like this?" She waited until Kelvin left, then confronted Peace. "You're falling for him, ABI? Just don't come crying when he disappears." Peace felt a strange fear inside. What if Mama Clara was right? Kelvin was beginning to feel guilty. He liked Peace genuinely, but hadn't told her the truth about who he was. One evening, he offered to take her and David for food at a small buka. Over the meal, Peace said, "You know so much about rich people. Are you sure you've never lived that life before?" Kelvin froze. "Why do you say that?" he asked. Peace shrugged. "You're too polished to be from the trenches." He smiled, trying to brush it off, but her words hit him. How long could he keep up the lie? What if she hated him after knowing the truth? Things became complicated when Mike, Kelvin's flashy friend, drove past Ojuelegba one afternoon and saw Kelvin chatting with Peace. He stopped his car and walked over, confused. "Guy, what are you doing here? And why are you dressed like that?" he asked. Peace was startled. "You know him?" Kelvin quickly pulled Mike aside and warned him to keep quiet. "I'm doing something serious here. Don't ruin it," he said. Mike laughed but agreed. However, Peace's eyes followed them suspiciously. Something wasn't adding up. Her heart began to worry, even though she didn't know why. That night, Peace had a strange dream. She saw herself dressed in a fine gown beside a man whose face kept changing. First, it was Kelvin's. Then it became a stranger's. People clapped. But suddenly the crowd vanished, and she stood alone in rags. A loud voice boomed, "Know who walks beside you?" Peace woke up sweating. She couldn't shake the dream off. The next day, she confronted Kelvin. "Who are you really?" she asked. "Tell me the truth, Ken. I don't want to be fooled." Kelvin looked at her long and hard. The time for truth had come, and it would shake both their worlds. Kelvin took a deep breath. "Peace, my name is not Ken," he said slowly. "My real name is Kelvin. I'm the son of Chief Wisdom, the man you helped when he was pretending to be a blind beggar." Peace's eyes widened in shock. "You lied to me?" she asked, stepping back. "I didn't plan to lie at first," Kelvin said, ashamed. "But I've never met someone like you. I didn't want you to see my wealth and treat me differently. I just wanted to be around you as myself." Peace shook her head. Her chest tightened. "You lied, and you played with my heart." Peace ran away from him without looking back. For days, she refused to answer his calls. She avoided her usual spot and stayed home with her brother. David noticed her sadness. "Is it because of that Ken guy?" he asked innocently. Peace nodded. "He tricked me. All of them are the same." Kelvin was restless. He had never begged anyone before, but he kept returning to Ojuelegba, hoping to see her. Even Chief Wisdom spoke peace on his behalf, but she remained cold. "I respected him because he was humble. Now I know he wore humility like a mask." One rainy morning, David showed Peace a small note that had been slipped under their shop's door. It was from Kelvin. "I understand if you never want to see me again, but I'm not asking for your love. I just want your forgiveness. If you still believe I'm a liar, I won't argue. But if you ever saw even a glimpse of truth in me, meet me under the big tree by the flyover this Sunday." Peace read the letter over and over. Her heart was still heavy, but something inside her stirred. Could she truly throw away all they had shared because of one lie? She decided to go, not for him, but for her own peace of mind. On Sunday, Peace arrived at the big tree before noon. Kelvin was already waiting, holding a flower and wearing a simple white shirt. He looked nervous. When he saw her, he stood up quickly. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. They sat in silence for a few moments. Then Kelvin spoke. "You changed me, Peace. I used to laugh at love, but now I know what it means to miss someone with your whole heart." Peace watched him carefully. "You have money. You could have had any girl. Why me?" Kelvin looked at her and said, "Because only you saw me when I had nothing." After a long talk, Peace forgave him, but not fully. "I'm not ready to fall back into your arms," she said firmly. "But if you're serious, prove it over time. Be real with me." Kelvin nodded. "Anything you want. I'll wait as long as it takes." Chief Wisdom smiled when he heard the news. His heart was finally at rest. "The seed has been planted," he said. "Let it grow naturally." Kelvin began spending more time helping Peace's brother with schoolwork, and even helped Mama Clara repair her shop. He was becoming a different man. Just when everything seemed peaceful, trouble returned in the form of Tonia, Kelvin's ex-girlfriend. She stormed into the mansion after hearing about Peace and shouted, "You left me for a street hawker?" Chief Wisdom tried to calm her down, but Tonia caused a scene and even insulted Peace's background. Kelvin walked in and heard everything. He stepped between them and said, "Tonia, you don't belong in my life anymore. Leave with what little pride you have left." Tonia screamed and stormed out. That night, Peace cried, "I can't live in that kind of world, Kelvin. I don't belong there." But he held her hand and said, "Then I'll bring my world to yours." 2 weeks later, Kelvin returned to Ojuelegba in a surprising way. Dressed in simple clothes, he came with a group of drummers and singers. A small crowd gathered as he walked to Peace's stall, knelt on one knee, and opened a small box with a ring. "Peace, you saw me when no one else did. You fought for me, fed me, and made me a better man. Will you marry me?" Tears rolled down Peace's cheeks as she stared at him. The crowd cheered and Mama Clara shouted, "Say yes, oh." Peace smiled and whispered, "Yes." The entire street erupted in joy. Kelvin kissed her hand, and even Chief Wisdom, watching from afar, shed tears. The wedding was simple but beautiful. It was held in a small church in Surulere, attended by friends, family, and even a few Ojuelegba hawkers. Peace wore a flowing white dress donated by a customer she once served. Kelvin wore a native attire, hand-sewn by local tailors. Chief Wisdom gave the final blessing. "My son has finally found a treasure, in a place others would never look. And peace, you brought peace to our home. May your marriage be full of truth, kindness, and joy. Everyone clapped, and the air was filled with singing and laughter. On the morning after the wedding, Peace woke up in a quiet, beautiful guest room. Kelvin led her outside to a small shop with a shiny new sign. Asterisk, Peace and Loaves Bakery and Cafe. Asterisk, you've always given to others, he said. Now it's your turn to build. Peace couldn't speak. She hugged him tightly. Kelvin smiled. This is just the beginning. I don't want to change you. I want to rise with you. Peace nodded, her heart full. Together, she whispered, and for the first time in her life, she felt like everything was possible. Years later, children would gather around Peace and Kelvin as they told the story how love found them in the dust and heat of Ojuelegba. David grew into a brilliant young man, managing the cafe while studying law. Mama Claire became family, and Chief Wisdom remained the proudest grandfather alive. Peace always ended the story with a lesson, never judged by clothes or status. Kindness is the true treasure, and love, real love, doesn't look at what you have. It looks at who you are. And every time she said it, people listened because she had lived it.